Hey everyone, Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to the author journey and happy St. Patrick's Day. If you're watching this on the day that it's airing on March 17th, 2026, it is St. Patrick's Day. And I almost forgot to wear my green, but as an O'Connell, I guess I celebrate St. Patrick's Day every day. So it's good to see you, good to be here. And I'm just so chuffed about today's guest is the very wonderful, lovely Heather Hendrie. She is a counselor, a nature therapist. I want to make sure that I don't miss anything here. She's a taboo-buster and a passionate advocate for women's issues and really embracing what makes us all human. And she holds a Bachelor of Kinesiology degree in outdoor pursuits from the University of Calgary and a Master of Arts in clinical mental health counseling and a concentration in transpersonal wilderness therapy from Naropa University. She's a registered clinical counselor with the BC Association of Clinical Counselors. So she's on the opposite coast from us here in Nova Scotia. She's in British Columbia. And she really does take a humanistic, mindfulness-based approach to her work with a focus on the present moment. And we're going to focus on our present moment as well. We're celebrating the launch of the third in the Awfully Hilarious anthology series. And I have all three here. Look how beautiful is that. There's nothing like holding a collection in your hands. And I think Heather will agree, and she'll share her feelings on that. But I also have the teaser for Pillow Talk. So these are the Awfully Hilarious series, and I'm going to bring Heather up without any further ado so that we can talk about Awfully Hilarious and the evolution of the series. Hey, Heather.
Hi, Anne, and hi, everybody. Happy St. Patty's.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just going off on a tangent because I'm just so excited for you about this series, about, where you've been and how far you've come. And I will ask you this question, but I want to say to folks in this, these are very spicy stories. And when I say taboo busting, like I'm not pulling any punches, and neither have you. And in the very back, it talks a little bit about the Awfully Hilarious project. And it says, it really took a life of its own, and I'm going to get you to elaborate on that. And it says, while the initial stories we gathered together focused on disastrous dating experiences and mortifying bodily function moments, they very quickly expanded to encompass women's health, medical mishaps, struggles with fertility, and beyond. So this really has taken on a life of its own. I also want to say I have a story in the last one about my experience with extreme menopause. Not quite as bad as some, but so, wow, so much to unpack here, Heather. Welcome back.
I just have to comment on when you said your experience with menopause and the hilarity in it. I love that we can laugh about it, but when you say not quite as bad as some, that quickly makes me think of your novel and how extreme it can get for some, right?
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. And that was my first novel, triggered by a night sweat. But I'm way beyond that. But it's certainly, like you said, it's great to think about those situations in our lives and find the humor in it, which kind of is the whole idea behind Awfully Hilarious. But as a therapist and a counselor, sometimes people aren't ready to laugh just yet, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you, when somebody says, oh my goodness, like, these books could be triggering, how do you?
Yeah. And I mean, that goes back to the whole title of the series, Awfully Hilarious. First, there's awful, yes, and then perhaps with time, it becomes hilarious. I had a great interview a month ago about Pillow Talk with Richard Krause on his show. It was so fun.
Awesome.
And he spoke to me and he said, tragedy plus time can equal comedy. And I think that's a bit of what we're playing with here, is that these are not necessarily like knee slapping, snortingly funny stories all the time. They're very poignant, but there is that shared connection of humanity where it's like, oh, I've been there too. So there's a real mix. And then some of them are are just hilarious. But
Yeah.
and of course, those events that are a bit more painful, we do have to hold more delicately, more gently, and that definitely plays in as we're editing and curating these collections.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I also want to give a shout out to one of our local authors here in Nova Scotia, Lindsay Harrington, who's been involved and has a poem in foreplay.
Yes, she's in both of these.
Yes. And hi, Lindsay. I hope you're watching. But why was it important to you to do this?
This most recent book came about because, I mean, I can talk about the why of the Awfully Hilarious series, but this most recent, I co-curated with Angeline Jimenez, who contributed to Awfully Hilarious period pieces. And she approached me shortly after the publish of that book and said, Heather, we need to go there. Sex, intimacy, pleasure, desire, sexuality. That's where we need to go next. And I was like, do we?
Yes, we do.
These books have progressively pushed at an edge for me. First it was dating, and then blood and periods, and now sex. But she was definitely right. And we begin with an epigraph. I think that's the word, epigraph, from Audre Lorde, talking about from her book, The Erotic as Power, and speaking of the deep power connected to the erotic, and also like how deeply stigmatized and shame-filled so many of these experiences are if we don't create space to talk about the shared nature of many of these experiences.
Absolutely. And, I was thinking about, these books aren't for everybody. And some people might say, oh, these are best left behind closed doors. But what I think is important is, you don't have to shout it from the mountaintops. But if you have, experiences that are unpleasant or even pleasant, that you want to share, but you go, oh, I can't talk about that. But knowing that, there is a collective of people who are more than open to talking about these things. And I loved the videos from the launch party for Pillow Talk. And, somebody was there, like writing poems, like right there, like a one-on-one kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yinzi Ho, who has stories in 3 of the 4 books. She's incredible, and she does live poetry. But speaking to that, at the launch most recently at the Squamish Public Library, we had 7 of our writers and contributors reading from their stories. And there was a repeat theme of folks saying they felt very nervous to share these stories, but they shared it because had they had a story like that sooner, it would have very much shortcut their suffering. So for example, Andrea Andries was speaking about her experience with asexuality, and she had never heard the term asexuality until she watched the amazing Jillian on sex education describing this with a young student and recognizing, wait, that's me. And so she felt she really needed to tell that story to reach out to somebody sooner. She's sharing about her religious background and how she just didn't have access to this information. Similarly, Hannah Davis, who's got a really spicy story here called Into the Wild, which I recommend reading, but even more, I recommend listening to, because the audiobooks are read by the writers themselves, and they're just, you can lie in bed and just really luxuriate in them. But in her story, she's speaking about her first experience with queer love, and woven throughout are the religious teachings and the messaging of don't do that, we don't go there, we don't talk about it, and how, yes, some people might not be ready to read these stories, but for those who need them, it could potentially be life-saving. And that's very much what compels me to do this. And, of course, before we clicked record, I've been sharing and talking about how I'm realizing, like, books, even best-selling books, don't seem to make money. But this is not why we do it. And if we're lucky, they make change. And that's truly my hope with this project, is that these stories can reach somebody in their suffering who's feeling a little bit alone or a little bit shy or a little bit uncertain, and recognize you're not alone in that. And your experience might not be the same as the one on these pages, but the courage of these contributors, just that keeps me going. It's so brave, I think, to tell stories in this way. And then we titrate it with humor.
Yeah, and your passion is palpable, Heather. I just love that, and your enthusiasm. And I've always loved you, you know that. And I'm so proud to have been
Ditto.
even a small part of this. And just when you say the audiobooks, I had so much fun narrating my story from the period pieces. So
It's so good. It's a whole other level
it.
hearing you tell it. It's like
Yeah.
being together over coffee or in like a cozy glass of wine and hearing like, let me tell you about this time. It just feels like I'm right. Like I loved your story
Yeah.
in the book, but then when I heard it narrated, it just makes it that much funnier, that much more poignant. And I mean, that's not normally done, right? That was so exciting for us to get to work with a company that made it possible for the narrators to tell their own stories. And like in Pillow Talk, people have come from different countries and are sharing their stories in their own voice, perhaps with their accent. Maybe English is a second language, and it enriches the experience to such a degree. That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it does 100%. And that's a really nice segue into you have no fear, my friend. Like, let's go. Let's rewind.
I've got plenty of fear.
Yeah.
But you know what? Okay, fear is an acronym I learned recently.
Yeah.
I used to take the F everything and run approach to fear. And now I'm like, F everything and rise, baby.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to make a poster of that.
Face everything and rise. That's
everything and rise. Oh, I love that. So let's rewind here. And like, how many years ago did we start sort of brainstorming about, the whole publishing process?
Yeah. I mean, we could go way back to me being a kid, and I felt always so seen by you. I think that likely supported the start of my author's journey as a little one. But much more recently, this book came out in January 2023. And of course, we actually launched it for Valentine's Day, but that's only 3 years ago. And then immediately the next year, in comes period pieces. Then this year, Pillow Talk and Foreplay, which this one was different in that we separated out the poetry and the prose, whereas the others weave together the poetry and prose, which was a fun model. Yeah. I still haven't decided what's maybe best for us going forward, but it's been fun to explore different approaches.
I love that. And the passion that I alluded to, it's been such a meteoric journey for you, because you really, like, after the first few sessions that we did, you just embraced it and ran with it. And then once in a while you come back and say, okay, what about this? And you were thinking out of the box from the get-go. So talk a little bit about that evolution. So from the self-publishing, like through to today, where you have this partnership with Tidewater Press, multi-title, and they've actually created an imprint now, like the Awfully Hilarious books. Talk a little bit about that evolution.
Yeah. Well, again, the whole process started somewhat accidentally, as many good things do, where I went on a really disastrous date and I called up a dear friend and I said, oh, I can't even with this dating anymore. And she says, I know, wait till you hear the last date I went on. We could write a book. And then ping, ping, ping. And we went from that idea of stapling together these stories and just delivering them to little free libraries to suddenly like receiving wider and wider acclaim and distribution. And that's the most exciting thing actually of being an imprint with Tidewater Press is they've got an infrastructure and distribution network across the country. So for example, I was so thrilled to see that there are 6 copies of Pillow Talk in the Toronto library system and they're all checked out and being read right now. And that's so thrilling when you go back to those days of like me and some of my best friends and our dating stories that we were just going to staple together under the title of the Tinderellas, and it's just, but I think very quickly what started to happen, and this might be because I'm a counselor, it's more, I like to quote Liz Gilbert, that idea of sometimes the creativity just comes, an idea takes you, and it's like a tiger by the tail, and you just need to hold on to the tail. And that's what I felt like with Awfully Hilarious. It's like, oh, there's more to this, and it's important, and people might need these stories. So I'm just holding on to the tail of the tiger as we go from self-publishing to now being an imprint to who knows what comes next with this series. I mean, and the community of contributors and readers and supporters has continued to grow. And it's increasingly diversified too, in terms of language, countries, people's lived experience, where people are. That's just so unbelievably thrilling to see. Like, it means so much every time. And this happened actually quite a lot after the first book and has increased, is that someone will reach out and say, I really needed to hear that story. Thank you so much to Paris or to Dean or to Andrea for telling that story, because I've never read a story like that. And it really was what I needed to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your timing is right on. 5 or 10 years ago, it may not have taken off, as well. Like in
I think you're
2013,
right.
when I published Mental Pause, it wasn't the thing, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're so brave!" And now everybody's talking about menopause, right? Hopefully that'll be a
you were leading.
resurgence.
Well, you were leading the way, and that's so critical. But I think you're right. I think there's a sweet spot right now where
Yeah.
these conversations are starting to happen, and since COVID, in an increasingly polarized space, I think we are really longing for connection. And that's something, as far as the audiobooks, when I say they're read in the narrator's own voices, that meant so much to me. And I really fought for that. And I was so delighted to get the support of the Canada Council to help make that happen, because it was a more costly approach, but it was, in my opinion, very much the right approach, and that the narrators get paid. But why that mattered to me so much is that now what's happening is a lot of people, for audiobooks, to make them cheaply, are getting AI robots to record it. And that's, I'm very much wanting to move in the opposite direction of true stories by real people that connect us in our shared humanity.
Oh my gosh. Okay, can I quote you? Yes.
Anytime.
Oh, that's fabulous. And so, and in that same vein, you have written a memoir. And again, it was something that you have been thinking about, over the last many years. And I want to share this. You have a publisher who has come on board.
Thanks to you. And they're the first publisher that you recommended I reach out to. Caitlin Press, based on Vancouver Island. This amazing feminist press. You know what's so fun? I'm so glad you're pulling this up. Like, look at this technology, but right on brand for me. And this is again, all happened accidentally, but on brand for me. You can notice the title. It's playfully provocative. So you've probably read the 1990s book by Anita Diamant, The Red Tent. And then this is an exploration of like, where the F is my red tent? Like, where is this space that we're trying to create with Awfully Hilarious, where people can talk about fertility, infertility, birth control, menstruation, menopause, all the things that if we don't talk about it, not only might we feel very alone, very embarrassed, but also we might feel a lot of pain and shame. And so this explores my experience with premenstrual dysphoric disorder, in the hopes that anyone who has premenstrual dysphoric disorder and doesn't know about it can figure out that if they have it, and then point to sort of a trailhead for treatment, because it took me 30 years to learn what it was and to know that I had it, because of the deliberate constructed ignorance that happens in a medical system that's nested in a patriarchal culture.
Right. And even if you try and explain, how horrible it is, and, you get that sort of dull look on the face and say, you suck it up. It's going to happen every month. You know what I mean? So
sorry, and I think it speaks to, Mental Pause with your novel and why that was so important. And I think really cutting edge, and the stories in these books, which these stories tended to be quite a bit more poignant and maybe a little bit less of the hilarious than we might see on the pages of these books, is because women's health has been so edgy. So women's pain has been so long dismissed. And then the added challenge is that women cyclically, or menstruating people cyclically, do and might experience a certain level of pain that doesn't necessarily indicate that something's wrong. So then it's tricky to figure out, well, where's the line that we cross where something really is wrong? And in the case of premenstrual dysphoric disorder, in my case, something's really wrong. And trigger warning here, but I would say it's potentially one of the leading causes of suicide with menstruating people. Wow. And it's shockingly common. We're talking 1 in 20 menstruating people. So we've got a prevalence that looks like type 1 diabetes, and yet there's so little understanding. There's so much missed diagnosis. Average time to diagnosis these days is still roughly sitting at 10 years or more. I'm very, when you say I'm passionate, I'm very compelled to to bring my story forward, not because it's my story, but because it's many people's story. And so I'm using the lens of my own life to hopefully connect with those who might resonate and thus find support. And it's already for sale. It's out there, Anne. I'm doing it.
Yay! I was going to say, let's bring that back up. Let's bring that back up. Caitlin Press.
I think it was 2 years ago that you suggested I reach out to Caitlin Press. And this came, Vicky, who runs the press, she and I had a conversation July of this past year. And here we go. We're working on the cover this very week and having a lot of fun with that.
Awesome. I'm so proud of you. And so it's coming out in winter, but looks like it's available to pre-order. So like if you're watching and you want this book, but don't want to forget, just make sure that you go and pre-order it, and then you can sort of forget about it and have it in time. Order 2 or 3 and gift them, to your fellow menstruating people, or even to your significant others, family members who don't get it. I want to re-emphasize while we're chatting, like what you do as a counselor, because I think that, the nature therapy is such an important realm. Do you know what I mean? So talk a little bit about what that is. And I'm just going to I love this picture of you.
Oh, thank you. That's taken by my dear friend, Ken Braithwaite, actually, a high school friend. He's built all my websites. He's been amazing. Shout out to him at Ethos Designs.
Yes, we collaborated in the very early days of your self-publishing journey.
He's actually responsible for the covers of both of these books. And actually, I should say, Ken, of course. And
I do.
These would have just been stapled together zines had it not been for him and for you, and coming together with how to turn stories into a book. And that's something that you do and that he did that I feel just so endlessly grateful for. But I've long held a passion, and this permeates my life, for both what connects us and what differentiates us. And that's something I get to explore daily on trail with my clients as a nature-based therapist. And what I actually really see the Awfully Hilarious Project as the bigger picture advocacy arm of the therapeutic work I do, because for the most part, the people I'm working with individually are suffering, not because they're doing something wrong, but because of dominant societal structures and narratives that would imply that there's potentially something wrong with us if we love who we're not supposed to love, or if we are passionate about a career in something that we're not supposed to follow. There's a lot of that.
Right.
If that makes sense. So I actually therapeutic work because out of my concern for social justice, and because the boxes that we build are too small for us. And so I'm very committed to my work around not pathologizing the person, but pointing out the problematic pieces in our context, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes such perfect sense. Oh my goodness, you're so brilliant. And again, I'm going to bring up this
Thank you.
this website. Do you find that the anthology series has enhanced your practice? Are people seeing this and saying, "Oh my God, I could use a therapist like that"?
In some ways, it's been very interesting because they stand separately and side by side, and yet they definitely inform and support one another, if that makes sense. So there will be times where I'm working with a client who's exploring something, and I mean, rarely would I recommend my books, but if there's no other book on the subject, like in the case of PMDD, you better believe I'm going to recommend my stories about PMDD to support somebody who's navigating that, because it's so important to be able to see our own experience reflected and mirrored in the experiences of others. And then, of course, because of confidentiality, we don't engage with client stories through this process. And also it does really inform my understanding of like, okay, wow, there's a lot of taboo around menopause and PMDD and menstruation. We need to talk about that one. And wow, there's so much stigma around polyamory, asexuality, queer love. We need to get this book out there. So I really see this as trying to shift the world. and then in the therapeutic piece is really just like honoring and supporting the individuals and validating that their experience is hard, because most of us are having to navigate through a world that hasn't been built for us. And the more intersecting layers of oppression that you hold, the more that would be the case. So that's actually something that's been really important with this. And you know this, Anne, is that we've really prioritized stories that haven't necessarily been published in mainstream publishing previous to this, that we've prioritizing stories and voices of people who may not have had access to previously be published, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. And I love what you say about intersections of oppression. Like, you know, when you start to look at your own challenges and blockades, sometimes you don't realize how deep they go and where those intersections have occurred.
Right.
So like, I'm a huge proponent of, you know, working with somebody like yourself to explore those difficult, you know, areas, you know, within your own challenges.
Yeah.
So I really applaud you for writing your memoir. How long did it take to write?
Well, it's an ongoing process. I would say roughly 30 years, because like with many memoirists, I knew I needed to write something. I knew I needed to write a book from the time I could hold a crayon, but I don't think I knew what book it was. And then, you know, Awfully Hilarious comes along and I'm like, I could do this book, but I also knew this was not the book that I have to write. This one that's coming is this Where the F is My Red Tent. And that's because I needed to live the story first. And I needed to come to a place of stability, diagnosis, understanding, also through my own therapeutic work and treating what was unfolding, to be able to have the perspective to share it and write it. So yeah, it's been a long, long process. As far as like the moment from like signing on with publisher to print, Caitlin Press is very, very fast. This is like unbelievable for the publishing industry, but it probably be kind of like years start to finish with them.
Nice. Oh, that's
But the process of writing it is much, much longer, like years and years of journaling. Like I remember when I was not that far from you at Mount Allison University in New Brunswick in my early 20s, even then I was waking up at 2 a.m, jotting down the ideas, but I don't think I knew what it was going to coalesce into until much more recently.
Wow. And so you took all of those journals and basically like massaged them into
That's what
some form of...
That's what I always thought I would do, but that actually was sort of the process work to get to the point where I could actually come to a blank page and have the perspective to to tell a bit more of a story from start to finish. So in Where the F, it actually begins, you know, I'm 5 years old as this story begins, and I'm running topless through my front yard. I pop out of our little red pup tent, and you'll see what transpires when you read the book. But it had to like start there. Then, you know, we have an inciting incident when my period comes, and then it carries us through until eventual diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, so one thing I meant to add, that when you were saying like, you know, my therapeutic practice that I do here, but also the Awfully Hilarious stories, you know how when we're living our passion, it does tend to weave together quite closely, like a Venn diagram. And what I think about the therapy practice and these books really have in common is that my hope and intent is that they offer a space where someone could feel seen and validated, and ideally have enough safety. And safety doesn't imply no discomfort, right?
Right.
Support to heal something that it was perhaps previously a wound.
Right. Work through that discomfort. Wow. There's just literally like so much that to uncover and to work through. We're about at our time, but I want to make sure that you are ready to come back when Where the F is My Red Tent comes out.
Yes,
and explore
please.
that. Yes, absolutely. And I just again want to congratulate you. I want to show again your book that's coming out. Hang on a second. There we go.
Sam. This is so fun. Oh yeah, there it is.
There it is. So go to Tidewater Press, and I'm sure, you know, wherever you normally like to find your next best read. And as Heather said, it's also in libraries that you can borrow. Is there an ebook version as well?
Yes, there's an ebook,
Okay.
an audiobook of all of the books are available in all the
Excellent.
formats and all the places. And I love, you got me onto that indiebooks.ca, so you can order them into your bookstores,
Local
or get them in the
library. Yep.
libraries. That's so fun.
Yeah, and that's a really, thank you for that. Indiebooks.ca is wonderful. You bring up that website, you type in your postal code, and then you type in the title of the book, and it'll come up with all of these bookstores that either carry it or will order it in for you. So, oh my God, Heather, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hang out backstage for a moment if you don't mind, and we'll just wrap up our conversation. But for now, thank you again for joining me.
What a treat. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for watching the author journey today. I'm Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing, and I hope you jump on that website. Heather, go and visit Heather Hendrie. Order an awfully hilarious book. The latest one is Pillow Talk, and it's a little steamy, so you might climb under the covers to read it with friends that may be closer than just your average friend. So again, Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing, and we'll see you next time on the author journey. Bye for now.